Well, it looks like it's 1 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our environmental justice / environmental education session this afternoon. And our presenters in this session are Omari Burrell with EPA Region 6, Michael Band with EPA Headquarters, and Agatha Benjamin with EPA Region 6. Our first presenter is Omari, and with that, I will turn it over to Omari.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Karen. Just want to first say welcome to everyone and thank you for joining us this afternoon. Again, my name is Omari Burrell. I am a life scientist in the Environmental Justice Program in Region 6, which is under the Office of Communities, Tribes, and Environmental Adjustments. With that, get started. I just want to let everybody know, this is an exciting time for us here in the region, as well as in the agency. I'm sure you all have been following the news and aware of a number of changes and a lot of conversations around environmental justice. Next slide. To start with that, I'd like to start with just an excerpt of a message that our new administrator, Regan, sent out back on April 7th. And I'd just like to read this section in its entirety just for you. I think it's very relevant to our discussion today and kind of gives you a good idea of our focus moving forward with EJ. And it says, it has advanced environmental justice initiatives in the past. We have much more work to do. Too many communities whose residents are predominantly of color, indigenous, or low income continue to suffer from disproportionately high pollution levels and the resulting adverse health and environmental impacts. We must do better. This will be one of my top priorities as administrator, and I expect it to be one of yours as well. So just wanted to share that. It kind of gives you an idea of just where our focus is as an agency and how important environmental justice is to us and will be part of our focus moving forward. Next slide, please. And so we'd just like to start out just in general with what is environmental justice. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this term or have heard some variations of it in the past, but we always just like to share this just for anyone that may be new to the terminology. And environmental justice simply is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of course, race, color, national origin, and income. This is in respect to development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. So that definition kind of provides you with a foundation for our focus here in Region 6 and kind of how we go about focusing our work and use this as a definition. Next slide, please. And so again, other definitions, there are just these are three of many terms, but these are some of the terms that are used probably in the majority of the time when we talk about things related to environmental justice. The first one is environmental justice community. And so the definition of that is simply when we talk about environmental justice community, we're talking about a minority or a low income community that has been plagued by one or more environmental issues. One thing I want to point out here is that while we do identify this as the definition for environmental justice community, there is no specific criteria that identifies an environmental justice community. And what I mean by that is there's not a specific permissible level, not a specific demographic breakdown, or anything along those lines when you are referring to identifying environmental justice community. One of the other definitions we have here is, of course, one I'm sure we're all familiar with, is minority. In respect to the environmental justice program, this means a community that is either 50% minority or the minority population It's 20% higher than that of the state's average, or county where these minority populations are located. Lastly, the one we have is low income. This designation is determined by the U.S. Census Bureau, that I'm sure you all have been familiar with. Some of the preliminary information from the latest census was shared yesterday. So we expect to see more information around the census coming out later in the year. But for the purposes of today and what we have is the most updated thresholds, when we talk about low-income communities, it's based on the current poverty thresholds. And for example, for 2020, the poverty threshold for a family of four was 26,695. And so based on that threshold, they would be considered to be low income. Next slide, please. So I gave you just a little bit of definitions and just a general definition of what environmental justice is. But one of the things I wanted to really talk about that we utilize as a tool to support our communities here in Region 6 are some of the grants that are awarded through the Environmental Justice Program. And so there are three main ones that are issued periodically. And the first one is the Environmental Justice Small Grants. These are grants that we typically have available for smaller agencies or smaller non-governmental organizations or community groups. And this just provides financial support for community groups that are working on issues in their communities. And so one of the big things is we're excited about, and I'll talk about it a little bit more later in the presentation, but because of some additional funding that we've received, they've been able to increase the amount of the award for the EJ Small Grants to $75,000 per award this year for one-year projects. I just want to make a note that the request for proposals are currently open. So if there's anyone who would be interested in these EJ Small Grants, or anyone who knows of some other groups that may be interested, just be aware that you have until June 1st, 2021 of this year to complete your application and submit it. There is a link here. I imagine that this presentation will be shared, but if there's anyone on the call that needs that information, just put something in the chat, or just say something at the end of the presentation, and we'll be sure to get it to you. The same thing with the CPS grants. The CPS grants also support activities in EJ communities, underserved communities. These awards tend to be a little bit more, and the project time period on them was about 2 years, and the award's $200,000. We typically see this as for some groups, smaller groups that have, through the EJ Small Grant Program, grown in size and just kind of focus. We've seen them sometimes reapply years later for a CPS grant, and also mid-size or larger size groups that work in EJ communities. And the last one is the State Environmental Justice Cooperative Agreement Grant, or better known as SEJCA. This provides funding to eligible applicants to address issues mostly from a state level. So we've seen a number of our state, and some of our other larger public health organizations apply for this type of award to address some of the issues in underserved communities. That award is $1 million per award, and it's also a 2-year project. Next slide, please. So as we talk about grants, we've talked a little bit about the Environmental Justice Program. As I mentioned in the beginning, this is a exciting time for us. The Biden-Harris administration has put significant emphasis on supporting the environmental justice work that we do here in the agency, as well as in the government. And so with that, A number of executive orders were issued, of course, you all know, earlier in the year. Two of those executive orders that we're touching on here today have specific language and focuses for environmental justice. One of those executive orders is 13985. And that executive order is the executive order for advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities. And then we also have the executive order 14008, which is the order that is focused on tackling the climate crisis at home and abroad. So under that executive order 14008, there have been some significant changes to our leadership and some of our advisory councils within the agency. One of those is the Federal Interagency Working Group on Environmental Justice. This is a interagency group that worked collectively to address EJ issues throughout the agency. And they will now be elevated to the White House, and that name is now being changed to the White House Environmental Justice Interagency Council. In addition to that, a new federal advisory committee on environmental justice has been implemented. They are also be working in the White House as the White House Advisory Council on EJ. So these are two councils that have been included, and it's as a result of the executive order. And finally, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, when grants, funding from Congress through the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. This was signed on March 11 of this year. It provides $100 million to the EPA for environmental justice. And so as a part of that, of course, has allowed us to increase the award amounts for the CPS and the small grants that are currently accepting applications. Next slide, please. So get into a little bit more specifics when we talk about the Executive Order 13985, which is, again, on advancing racial equity and support for underserved communities. It was issued back in January on the 20th. And one of the charges in the executive order is that our charge is to pursue a comprehensive approach to advancing equity for all. And that, of course, includes people of color and just other groups that have been historically underserved and marginalized. One of the other focuses is the executive order affirms advancing equity, civil rights and racial justice, and equal opportunity. It affirms that as a responsibility of our entire government. So not just EPA when it comes to dealing with environmental justice issues, but our sister agencies that also work in services and work with communities to have this as a focus. And finally, it recognizes that advancing equity requires a systemic to dealing with some of the fairness. To making sure that fairness is in the decision-making process, and also the other piece of that is the redress of inequities. Inequities, in policies and programs that can sometimes serve as barriers to equal opportunity. Next slide, please. Okay, so the next slide, we talk a little bit more about Executive Order 14008. This is an executive order that's focused on tackling the climate crisis. There are a number of sections in executive order. So we have focused in on some of the sections that are applicable to environmental justice. So the first one is section 219. In this section, one of the focuses is, of course, achieving EJ to be a part of agency's missions. And we'll be doing that, of course, by developing programs and policies and activities, to address, some of the disproportionately high in adverse environmental and human health and climate-related issues in underserved communities. In addition to this, there will also be a focus on addressing the economic challenges that are the result many times of these types of impacts. Second piece of that is securing environmental justice and spurring economic opportunity for underserved communities, and who have dealt with who've been overburdened by population, pollution issues. In addition to, they've also been overburdened with underinvestment in housing, transportation, and things of that nature. And finally, the last piece, which I think is one of the most important pieces when you are talking about environmental justice and working with underrepresented communities to address their concerns and address their issues, is actually consulting with members of these communities. It is just a core piece of what we do here in Region 6, especially in the environmental justice program, is, as we tackle these issues, it's important to remember our community members know more about, their issues sometimes than we do. So it's important to have their input. And so including this in an executive order was very important to show that, this is actually a part of our best practices when we begin to look at addressing EJ issues. Next slide, please. And so in a continuation of Executive Order 14008, Section 220, which is what we talked a little bit about earlier in the presentation, the Federal Interagency Working Group on EJ has been elevated to the White House, and they are now named the White House Environmental Justice Interagency Council. There are about over 11 federal agencies represented, and various White House offices represented on this council. And their charge is to develop some clear performance metrics to ensure accountability. And annually, they will be publishing a performance scorecard on how this implementation is going. And just as of note, they've already been meeting and getting started. The first meeting was back on April 5th. So I'm sure we'll be receiving more guidance and information in the upcoming months on some of those ideas and implementation strategies coming out of that meeting. In addition to that, we also have Section 221. This one is the section where the White House Environmental Justice Advisory Council, as mentioned, is being created. And it consists of 26 members. Those members represent various stakeholders, which also include the tribal government and indigenous organization representatives. Their charge is to provide advice to the chair of the Council on Environmental Quality, and also provide advice to the White House Environmental Justice Interagency Council. They held their first meeting back in March 30th of 2021. These meetings are open to the public, and they have two meetings coming up, one this week, April 28th of this week, and then also May 13th of 2021. Both of these meetings are available to the public. There's a website where you can go and register if you'd like to participate and listen in on those sessions. Again, I have the links embedded in this presentation, so if it's shared, you'll be able to click these links and go directly to the registration page. And finally, just want to mention that the NEJAC, or National Environmental Justice Advisory Council, it still exists. Neither one of these councils were created to replace the NEJAC. These are just additional support councils that have been put together to further support the environmental justice work that we're doing here in the region, in the agency and in the region. Next slide, please. And so finally, as we talked a little bit about the American Rescue Plan Act, this is a law that provided $100 million to the EPA to address health disparities as a result of pollution and COVID-19. And so out of that, $50 million of that money is for grants and contracts and other activities, and it's designed to address issues, environmental and public health related issues in underserved communities. And this is, of course, again, where we were able to take some of this funding to increase the awards of our EJ and CPS grants. It also, under the American Rescue Plan, it also pertains to EPA programs. So some of the examples are retrofitting and replacing diesel engines, some of our brownfield redevelopment activities, then also some of our technical assistance that we have for smaller communities that have to deal with infrastructure issues and development. And lastly, $50 million will fund activities under Section 103 and 105 of the Clean Air Act. These sections are related to air quality monitoring and the prevention and control of air pollution. So again, an exciting time. I'm sure in the upcoming months, we'll begin to see more guidance on specific grants and awards and programs that are available and will be provided as resources to our EJ community and our EJ networks. And so we are looking forward to this next phase in the environmental justice program here in the region, and we are excited about the great work that we'll be able to continue and hopefully just increase and build on the things that we're doing so far. And so with that, I'll take it to the last slide, and if there's anyone who has any questions or just like to make any comments or anything like that, we can take those at this time. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you. I've gotten a couple of requests for the slide presentation, and I will take care of sharing that. Also, if you're calling in, you can send an email to me if you have any questions, and I will forward it on. Let me check my email real quick to see if I have any questions. I don't have any. Amari, do you have any in your chat box?
No questions in my chat box either.
Okay, we just saw one come in. Do you have the link for the WHEJC?
Yes, and what I'll do, I'll drop it in the chat box, and so anybody that wants that link, I can drop it in.
Okay, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Jacqueline, if you don't catch that, I will make sure we get that to you. Okay, I don't see any other questions or comments. So we will thank you again, Amari. We'll move along to our next presenter, which is Michael Band. And Michael, let me give you presenter privileges.
All right.
You should be able to share your screen now.
Yes, I can. I'm seeing that option. And can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, and I can see your PowerPoint.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. So you're seeing just my PowerPoint, correct, right now?
Yes, it's the full screen PowerPoint only.
Wonderful, wonderful. All right. Well, my name is Michael Band, and I work in the EPA's Office of Environmental Education in Washington, D.C. at EPA headquarters. I'm an education grant specialist, and I manage the National Environmental Education Grant Program. I've held this position going on 2 years in August, but my career in the public sector started about 10 years ago as a Peace Corps volunteer in Colombia and later in the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Communications and Outreach before I made my way over to the EPA. I always like to start my presentations by providing a bit of a roadmap. So during today's 20 to 25 minute presentation, I'll be discussing environmental education, which you might hear me refer to as EE. In the future, I might use those interchangeably, so EE or environmental education. I'll be talking about the EPA's Environmental Education Grant Program, plans for the next competition, highlighting a few of our recent winners, talking a bit about COVID's impacts on the EE field, sharing some useful internal and external environmental education resources, and talking about 2 award competitions in the Office of Environmental Education that are currently open. I should note that this presentation provides a general overview of the Environmental Education Grant Program, but please consult each request for application when they're published for the most complete and current details. Environmental education is incredibly varied in where and how it happens, but the foundation of the field can be traced back to a definition that was crafted during the first international conference focused on environmental education, which took place in Tbilisi, Georgia in 1977. And the Tbilisi Declaration defines environmental education as a learning process that increases people's knowledge and awareness about the environment and its associated challenges, develops the necessary skills and expertise to address the challenges, and fosters attitudes, motivations, and commitments to make informed decisions and take responsible actions. So there is obviously a lot to unpack with that Tbilisi definition, and I always find it helpful to look at the EE, or the environmental education continuum. That helps kind of make that definition a bit easier to break down. So oftentimes people that are not too familiar with environmental education can confuse EE with environmental outreach. However, there are key differences between environmental outreach and environmental education. Environmental outreach projects might disseminate information and sometimes ask audiences to take specific actions, but don't necessarily teach people how to analyze an issue. Outreach might present a particular point of view and often in pursuit of a particular goal, and sharing information and outreach, while they're valuable tools, those alone fall short of the goal of EE, which is stewardship. So while education, information, and outreach are involved in environmental education, those alone do not meet the goals of stewardship, which is the ultimate goal in environmental education. Environmental education covers this entire range, this entire continuum, from awareness to stewardship. So while EE projects might include environmental information or outreach, like setting up a community meeting to inform residents about a toxic site in their area and where they can go for help, or a campaign to get volunteer participants for restoration of soil health, or a streams riparian zone, those activities alone are not environmental education because they are not teaching the target audience how to think and analyze and solve problems. The National Environmental Education Act of 1990 is the law that brought EPA's Office of Environmental Education into existence, along with the Environmental Education Grant Program. And I should mention a handful of other initiatives and programs like the Student and Teacher Award Program, which I will talk a bit about later on in this presentation. So the National Environmental Education Act requires the EPA's Office of Environmental Education to use 38% of its annually appropriated funds toward the Environmental Education Grant Program each year. So it is the largest, funding-wise, the largest chunk of the office's funding goes to support the EE grant program. Now, in a typical year, that 38% of the office budget works out to anywhere between $2 and $3.5 million in environmental education grant funding. The EPA's Environmental Education Grant Program provides financial support for projects that design, demonstrate, and/or disseminate environmental education practices, methods, or techniques that serve to increase environmental literacy and encourage behaviors that will benefit the environment in the local communities in which they are located. The projects this program funds all promote environmental and conservation stewardship, which, if you recall the continuum, is the ultimate goal of environmental education, and to help develop knowledgeable and responsible students, teachers, and citizens. I should also mention a few things that this grant program does not fund. It does not fund technical training of environmental management professionals. So that might be someone who works for a water utility company, training them to do their job. It does not fund projects that stop at information and outreach. That part of the continuum. It does not fund advocacy, promoting a particular point of view or a course of action. Again, environmental education, the goal is to teach the target audience how to think and analyze problems, not present one point of view and say, you must advocate for this viewpoint. It does not fund, this grant program does not fund lobbying or political activities, non-educational research and development, or construction projects. So constructing, let's say, a building or renovating a building of any kind, like major construction projects where you're using the majority of the budget to construct or renovate a building. Since 1992, which was the first year EE grants were awarded, this grant program has awarded a total of 3,859 grants, ranging from $1,000 to $250,000. So all of those grants combined, the program has funded over $81 million since 1992. The grant program has also awarded grants to organizations from all 50 states and Puerto Rico, America Samoa, Guam, Palau, Saipan, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Historically, this grant program has been one of the more competitive at the agency. In our most recent competition, which was in fiscal year 2020, we received 307 applications and awarded 35 grants for a total of $3.25 million. The largest number of applications the program has received in a single year was 1,500. And in recent years, the funding requests have been between $50,000 to $100,000 per project. In the interest of time, I don't want to spend a whole bunch of time going over the eligibility requirements because there are quite a few, and the RFA is you know, quite complex. But a few things I do want to note are that local education agencies are defined separately by each state. Now, usually states define them as school districts, but you will definitely want to make sure that you confirm in your state what they define as a local education agency if you are interested in applying for our next competition. Tribal education agencies that are eligible include schools and community colleges controlled by a tribe but not administered by the Bureau of Indian Education. Though counties and municipalities are not mentioned directly, so local governments, they're not mentioned directly on this slide, we do accept applications from environmental agencies at those government levels, as long as they can demonstrate they have a mandate to educate the public. So something in their bylaws that mentions education and educating the public. This goes for tribal environmental agencies as well. Some tribal environmental agencies may be eligible if they are not 100% federally funded and if they have a mandate to educate the public. I also want to note that individuals are not eligible to apply. So a teacher, a student, a community leader, a farmer, they are not eligible to receive an award under this grant program. And that goes for for-profit companies as well. They are not eligible to receive an award under this program. Now, as you can see on this slide, most of our grants have been awarded to nonprofits, followed by post-secondary institutions. A total of 70 tribal education or tribal nonprofit organizations have received funding under this grant program. So although not many, that number is not as high as some of the other categories, there certainly have been tribal education agencies and tribal nonprofits that have received an award under this program, and we have a few current grantees from that group as well. Each EE grant solicitation contains a list of both educational and environmental priorities. All applicants, when applying, must select at least one of each, so one educational and one environmental priority when applying for this opportunity. The educational and environmental priorities listed on this slide are from the FY20 competition, so our most recent competition, which is closed. Historically, most of our grantees have focused their work on general environmental literacy, water, biodiversity, and ecosystem preservation. I do want to note that both the educational and the environmental priorities for each competition are determined by the current EPA administrator at the time the solicitation is published. So these priorities are from 2020. Now we have a new administrator at the EPA. So it's safe to think that when we announce our next competition, some of these priorities are going to be changing. Now we'll talk a bit about the information that is available related to the next competition. I will admit it is limited in nature because we have not made any announcements about the 2021 competition, and I'm not able to speculate on what this administration's new priorities will be. But what I can say is we are planning on running a competition in 2021. So at least announcing the competition in 2021. And I think it's safe to say that this administration will have some new priorities just based on the executive actions and kind of quotes that the current administrator has said in his time here at the EPA. You know, you can think that climate change will be back as an environmental priority, and environmental justice will certainly be at the forefront as well. Now, that is really all of the information that I have related to the next competition, but I do highly recommend joining the EE Grants listserv to stay up to date on all EPA environmental education information, which would include future announcements related to the 2021 competition and the availability of funds in 2021. So you can join the listserv by going to this website, epa.gov/education/grants. On the right-hand side of the page, you'll see this image here that says EE Grants listserv. All you have to do to join is enter your email here and then complete a process that's just a few steps where you can indicate that you're interested in the EE Grant listserv. You can also join other EPA listservs at that time. I wanted to kind of highlight two of our grantees from two of our tribal grant recipients. And the first is a current grantee, the First Nations Development Institute. They are based out of New Mexico and they're continuing the tradition of indigenous farming. Project is building the capacity of native farm-to-school programs in New Mexico. And they are currently working on putting together a native farm-to-school guide for schools that are interested in starting a native farm-to-school program. Another grantee, one of our tribal recipients based out of Washington has been focusing on water quality in Washington. And they've hosted day camps and have also provided water quality data collecting tools, and participants have used traditional canoes to collect and analyze water data. Now, these are just two project ideas, so a very quick snapshot of what some of our grantees are working on. But I do want to let everyone know we have a web page, an EE grant description web page, which lists the summary of every grant that this program has funded since 1992. and you can filter that page based on, the year it was awarded, based on the state, based on the region, and you can also search keywords like water or farm to school or tribal organization or environmental justice and see all of the grants that match those descriptions. So that'll give you a better idea of really the different types of projects this program is funding. As I mentioned earlier in the presentation, this grant is one of the more competitive at the EPA. Now, with that in mind, there are multiple ways tribal education agencies, Native nonprofits, local government agencies can benefit from EE grant program funding. The first and perhaps most obvious is to apply as the prime recipient. This would mean you are managing the program directly, and you would be the entity requesting between $50,000 and $100,000 directly from the EPA. A second way to benefit from this program funding is to be a sub-grantee. Now, this grant program requires 25% of all EPA funds be used as subgrants of $5,000 or less. These subgrants are determined by the prime recipient and awarded by the prime recipient. So as an example, this might look like going back to one of the projects I just highlighted, the First Nations Development Institute. They receive $100,000 and they might give you, a tribal nonprofit, $5,000 to help them create the graphics and publish their Native Farm to School manual. Additionally, we always encourage our grantees to work with partners to develop, design, and implement their projects. So partnering with a prime recipient is another way to get involved and benefit from this grant program. COVID has had has dramatically changed and challenged the field of environmental education. One obvious change was that COVID-19 brought, one obvious change was that COVID-19 brought a stop to all in-person EE programming. With the vast majority of our grantees offering in-person, nature-rich experiences, many of our grantees have had to really get creative and innovate and use innovation to pivot to virtual platforms. Other grantees have seen this as an opportunity to have their target audience focus on nature right outside of their homes. So taking a very localized approach to EE. The EPA is also working with our grantees and allowing all of our grantees to apply for a 1-year no-cost extension, which is helpful for those grantees that might not have the capacity or the ability to change their work plan. So they are able to request an extension. And, those are just 3 ways that we are working with our grantees and that our grantees are using creativity to continue their projects throughout the pandemic, but there are many, many more ways. On this page, I have listed EPA resources and external resources. This page is going to be helpful no matter what level your understanding of environmental education is, whether or not you're hearing about environmental education for the first time, or you're a seasoned environmental education practitioner. So on the EPA side of things, I have listed the Office of Environmental Education homepage, which is where you will find those grant summaries and much more, and information about the upcoming grant announcement when it becomes available. The EE Grant helpful resources page lists, like the link suggests, helpful resources for folks looking to apply for grants and links to some training videos as well. Our lesson plans, homework ideas, teacher guides, games, and quizzes webpage is very useful for EE practitioners, for teachers, whether it be formal or non-formal, for parents, for after-school program providers, or really anyone who's looking to offer and teach environmental education. As we have ready-made lessons, homework ideas, we've got games on that site that are age appropriate for a wide range of children, and a lot more. So definitely check that one out. And then our National Service Center for Environmental Publications. This is EPA's, an EPA website where you're able to order publications free of charge and have them shipped to your address. And if they're not available for shipping, then you can download them free of charge. And they have a number of great environmental education publications on that site as well. And the EPA, I linked the EPA grants website. It's not EE specific, but it does offer a number of training videos for folks that have never applied for a grant, a federal grant, and offers some tips, helpful tips for kind of first-time applicants, because the process, it's not always the most intuitive when applying for a federal grant. Some of the external resources I listed, again, these are not EPA resources, but they all have great information, especially resources during, COVID times when everyone is online and teaching EE virtually. So check out Project Learning Tree, the North American Association for Environmental Education, the National Environmental Education Foundation, My Environmental Education Evaluation Resource Assistant. Check out those resources, and there are just so many more. These are just a few that I think you all might find useful. Now on to two current opportunities in the Office of Environmental Education. So in addition to the Environmental Education Grant Program, the office I work in also runs an award program for students and teachers. And the deadline for that program is coming up on the 30th, so 3 more days to apply. The PEYA program is the student program, and there are 2 categories for students K through 5 and also for students 6 through 12. Each award winner receives a presidential plaque, and all qualified applicants receive recognition from EPA leadership as well. I've listed the website there that has more information about the eligibility requirements and also the application information. The PIAEE award is for teachers K through 12, and the PEYA, the Student Award Program, are for kind of activities that students have done or student groups have done in the past year. The teacher award program is more of a lifetime achievement, and the teacher award winners, in addition to the teacher winning, $2,500, the school district is also awarded $2,500. So I listed the website for or where you can go learn more about the teacher award program as well. And again, the deadline for applying to both of these award programs is coming up quickly here on April 30th. And that will do it for me. I'm now happy to answer any questions, and I listed my email here as well. So if you think of a question a bit later in the day, you can feel free to email me, and I will get back to you as soon as possible.
Thank you, Michael. I don't see anything in my chat box. If you want to check yours, Michael, to see if there's any chats in there.
I am not seeing anything now.
Okay. Also, if you're calling in and you're not able to use the chat box, you can email me or Michael a question, and we will follow up with you that way. So thank you, Michael. I'll keep watching the chat box in case someone does put something in it, but I think we'll move on to our next presenter. And our next presenter is Agatha Benjamin with EPA Region 6. And we are ready when you are, and I think you're still on mute.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to share an overview of the EPA Environmental Justice Screening Tool. Next slide, please. I will begin. Next slide. I would like to begin. I would like to share with you some information about myself and my credentials. My primary job responsibility in the environmental is the Environmental Justice and Tribe NEPA Federal Project Approach Review to review and analyze compliance with Executive Order 13175, consultation and coordination with Indian tribal government, and Executive Order 12898, federal action to address environmental justice in minority population and low-income population. I am the Region EJ point of contact. I coordinate between Office of Environmental Justice and headquarters in our office, and also coordinate activities within our office with the division, Region 6 divisions and programs, and coordinate training. I am a registered professional engineer in the state of Texas with specialty within specialized in structure and environmental engineering. My experience through the years include liquor, air, toxic, and pesticide compliance and rulemaking. And I was a Superfund remedial project manager for the state of New Mexico. And prior to EPA, I basically supervised the construction, infrastructure construction project with the Corps and TxDOT. And I worked in the doing school patrolling in the street as a student. Next slide, please. Okay, the presentation discussion would cover a brief introduction to EJ Screen, the EJ Screen data, map and report, EJ Screen uses and benefit, and the future of EJ Screen. Next, please. Next, please. We're now going to start with the introduction of EJ Screen. The key features of EJ are the EJ indexes, and they are really to combine the demographic and environmental data to highlight vulnerable population. And that which means that anybody that group of people particularly impacted, such as children, people with disability, people who are chronically ill, the elderly, people living in, anybody that living in an area prone to impact, such as flooding near refineries, or just high hazard pollutant in the air, or other hazards nearby and toxic. And that includes noise, dust, etc. EPA, then we have the annual update. This EJ Screen is updated annually. and it's really accessible and intuitive. It's a web-based, easy to learn, and open source. And we have a lot of technical information on the website and tutorials and things that to really get you familiar and help you assessing the tool and familiarizing yourself with the tool. And it has a high resolution data. It's the central block group level unit of analysis. Next, please. EJ, the new features within EJ Stream. In 2020, we updated EJ Stream in January. Sorry about that. In January of 21 due to the COVID and other delays. But the end of the improvement involved improvements were improved data dictionary for EJ Stream download, the ability to bring in shape files, downloadable data at the track level, improved source data on locations such as Superfund site, recent data as an available map layer in the climate related indicator. And other thing I'd like to state is that next year we probably will not be doing an update, but that's later. Next slide, please. The background of EPA, EJ Stream, we started building the stream back in 2010, and we released it in 2015 after review by the public and the NEPA National Environmental Justice Advisory Committee and a few more experts to see, get some of the bugs out, to see if it really was, how useful it was, and then we released it to the public. And then in 2017, we released the mobile version of the tool, and thereafter we annually updated. And as I stated earlier, in 2020, we got our annual update, but it was delayed until January. And next year, we probably, for 2021, this year, we probably will not have an update because of the executive order, the charge that Office of Environmental Justice was given to help build a new climate tool, screening tool. So we're working on that right now. Next slide, please. Before we really get into the tool, it's very important to know what the caveats and limitations of the tool are. And one of the things, environmental indicators are mostly screening level proxy for active exposure risk. It is not a risk tool. It cannot say this is a risk. It's just letting you know that there are possibilities there. There are things there that is to have concern about and to take into consideration when you're doing your risk assessment. The indicator varies in vintage. The EJ Stream does not cover all environmental or EJ issues. So it's good to, you still have to use your knowledge. It's not a replacement of knowledge and homework. We still got to do that. It's not substitute. It's not a substitute for what you know and what's out there. The census data has limitation and can kind of like, I guess, miss small communities or do not include them or define them, does not define them as a EJ community because of their size. So results should be verified on the ground when possible. And as I stated earlier, it's very important to make sure that what you see is there. And sometimes we say, well, what good is the tool if we have to still go out on the ground? What it does is give you an overview of what's there at the time that it was the map layer at that present moment that this tool was updated. And you may go out and find, because of the center block, that you have something that did not fit right within that block, but was right near or within the vicinity or the EJ community or within the population that you have concern about. EJ Stream does not identify EJ communities. EJ community, it's not a definitive action. It does not say this is a EJ community. It tells you there is a large population, a minority or low income individual, but it does not say it's 50% less than the state. It does not do that. So you still will have to do your analysis and your homework. Next slide. Now we're going to talk about the EJ stream data. As you see here, we said the block. We usually do not use the block because of the Privacy Act. The one that we mainly use here in EJ Stream is the block rule, and it's really a collection of residential block, mostly between 600 and 3,000 people. But you also can go by census tract. You can do the county if you want to do a large division within the state, or you can look at it from a state perspective. And if you want to look larger than that, you can do a comparison to the whole United States. So you can start just within your community and compare it all the way up to a county, compare it with the state, and then compare it with the Union States, all the states. So next slide, please. The type of data in EJ Stream. We have, there are 7 indicators, which is demographic indicators. There are 11 environmental indicators and 11 EJ indicators. And you have the demographic and environmental indicators together, which sometimes, if you use, could be used in various ways to do collective cumulative impact to show you a cumulative effect that's a project or a refinery or a company can have on your community, even though it may not be solely that entity that's causing a problem, but a cumulative totality of everything that's going on could change the dynamics of that community or what's impacting that community. And also in there, in addition to the primary data set, you have there's additional environmental data, additional demographic data, and other data sources within the EJ Stream tool. Next slide, please. What are the demographic indicators? Okay, it's the low income, which is a household less than or equal to twice the federal poverty level, which you heard earlier by Meyer when he was talking about what constitutes poverty level. Then also the minority, people of color, and you heard that earlier too. It's a list based on your racial status or your race other than white alone, or a list of your ethnicity as Hispanic or Latino. And less than high school education, and people that's 25 or older whose education is short of a high school diploma. And it's all talking about the language, if you speak English or you don't. How many people under 5, under the age of 60, over 64, and low income plus a combination. If you double whammy, if you're low income and then you're minority, so that's a clear with problem. Okay, next. Environmental indicators are, these are how and what you look at to decide what is the environmental impact or that the receptor are encountering due to whatever may be impacting their community. It could be like in air, toxic, cancer risk, lifetime risk from inhalation of air toxins. And one thing is like someone may be breathing air for a long period of time, and they do not realize it, and over years, that whole community, you wonder why everyone in that community has some form of cancer coming down with like the same type of cancer. And then when make a data on respiratory hazards, these are particular matters, 2.5 particular matters, which is sometimes people in the community don't understand the significance of this, because once you breathe this in, it's enlarged in your lungs and cause some serious problems. And then ozone, and we all know about ozone and traffic proximity and volume. Next. Also, in addition, you have lead paint indicators, which is, of course, houses that were built before pre-1960, and there's still some out there. Some have been renovated, but you still have some homes and things that still exist. Proximity to risk management plan site, proximity to hazard waste facilities, proximity to national priority risk site, which is Superfund site, and wastewater discharge indicators. All these are things that can impact your environment, your community. Next. Maps and reports. Okay. Okay, thank you. Okay, additional EJ Springs data, you have access to the weather, the census data, EPA sites such as Superfund, Brownfield, non-attainment area, and etc. Places, parks, schools, churches, hospitals, and all this is important when you want to look at your site in its totality. And EJ consideration of tribal areas, public housing, prisons, and etc. And outside map. It has the ability to bring an outside map. Admitting 2 does not have that, and so that is a very good tool within EJ Springs. Next. Now, how do you the result of rank when you do reporting and things like that? You can rank by percentile, and percentile put indicators into common unit 0 to 100. For example, a place at 80% percentile nationwide means 20% of the United States population was a higher value. And ranking values at a percentile allow comparison of the indicator measures with different units. It does not mean that these are equal or comparison. You still have to do your risk analysis or assessment. Next. When you're doing your mapping, some of the things you want to take under consideration is the flexibility in how to select your area or analysis. You can do it by address, points with buffers, use defined polygon, and etc. You use city track, you can do it by city, track, or county, as we discussed earlier. And ability to do variable-based map, topographical, street, and etc. Ability to bookmark location for future analysis, and you can bookmark it and we'll come back to it, and you can pick back up right where you want it to go. And next. Okay, thank you. Okay. As far as the report, you can do multiple reports. It is available in EJ Springs. They are printable, the standard reports. Shareable analysis of selected location. You can complete a map, graph, EJ indies, and raw values. You just have to play around with it and follow kind of instruction on what you want to do. And census report, you can utilize the ACS or the central data, demographic analysis of the selected location. So you use that to try to find out things in the area and what's it mean. Next. This is the mobile version of EJ Springs that we talked about earlier. And the importance of it is that it's optimized for a phone or tablet. You can be out in the field. You don't have to have a computer. You just can pull it up on your phone. It uses location to generate map and report. It's, like I said, no app to download, full version available, and it's designed to increase tool accessibility. Wherever you go, It goes with you as long as you have your mobile. That's next, please. EJ screen users. EJ screen in action. What does, who is using EJ? What is going on? How is it being used? EJ is used for EJ analysis. We do have a lot of the I think several agencies that utilize EJ Stream. It's used for community outreach, prioritization, retrospective report, environmental analysis, education and teaching, and research. And it goes from state, local government, federal government, community, faith-based, consulting practice, business, foundations, and various other individual states, all of those use EJ Stream. Next, please. I particularly want to talk about EJ uses by tribal and how it can be used by the tribe, especially when you're dealing with like NEPA projects or other federal projects that impact tribal land and the Native American indigenous population. We could start by looking at like water streams, lakes, rivers, and creeks. There are numerous projects or NEPA projects that came up, and I just brought up these three. And these projects basically, like the farmers, ditch and the other two, or the other one, what they do is they really, you can utilize EJ Stream to, I would say, once they start doing renovation or construction, especially on the, I can't really say the word, pronounce the word right, so I'm not gonna mess it up. Shirley project, the one in San Juan, they were changing the area to better to stop erosion, to try to maintain, and also in the project they were putting in pipes and all that to transport water to other parts for farmers and things like that. It had its pros and it had its cons, and it did impact nearby communities. And one thing EJ Stream could do is you could utilize it in a way where you can pull up all the water sources, everything in that area, more like an aerial assessment, and look at what's in the area, other projects in the area that may be impacting your water stream, or also what could be causing down or up or down or stream from those projects that may be impacting water in the fire lakes or anything like that that may be that may be active or dried up. So, and then things that you may not. Sometimes we be in an area and we do not know what's down the road from us, and we never been down the road or 10 miles away. Then you can just maybe pull up EJ Stream. You can see if there's any new construction, what type of construction there is, if there are or is in the construction areas, and if they're building like, I'd say, warehouses, or if they're building different electrical, I'd say, electrical projects or drilling, and all these things, if you look at it in its totality, you can get a better idea of what the impact is. It's not, if you know your area based upon the population who live there, you do not need it to identify demographics, but you know what the demographics are. So then you would basically use the tool as an environmental educational type tool to find out what's there, what the proximity, what's impacting your area, what's going to impact your area, future projects there, what's already there, what's nearby the project, and all those good things. And then same thing with Superfund site. Superfund site, you could use it for like water source, cleanup, route, road, or natural sources. And like Church Rock or Uranium Mill project, in northeast New Mexico. And basically, of course, it was requested by the tribe, but you still want to make sure that it is done in a protected manner, that the route that's being taken does not impact anyone or of the surrounding area. You can look and make sure that any lakes or anything in the area that may not have been considered is being considered, or any other things that may be that need to be done. And especially like people don't realize, okay, the route that you're going to take to move or relocate a landfill or discard material from a landfill. So we don't want to just narrow it to the site itself and what's right up on the site, but also what's down the road from the site. Another important thing that that goes on, especially in Oklahoma now, certain part of New Mexico area, we have a lot of oil and gas leasing going on, and some of the concerns or the air, the noise, water resource, impact on natural resources, groundwater, and things like that. So what a good thing to do is if you end up having so many oil wells in the area, you can kind of like use EJ Spring to do a cumulative impact of what's going on in not just one well. If we've got 10 leases, how far apart are they? What has to be removed over with everything being done, you can see what area will be impacted, what damage could be done to what part of the land, what part of the tribal property, or what they call the private property. So this is very EJ Spring to be utilized in those areas. And also when it comes to groundwater, we do not have, but we're working on it. Finding domestic wells, water wells, and making that part of EJ Spring. So that way it'll be able to locate all the domestic water wells in certain areas. And EJ Spring, especially for rural areas that spread wide out, the human population is spread it out and not right up on top of each other, then it is, it still have a little, things that need to be worked out there. But overall, it's a pretty good tool in that area. And then, as I stated earlier, area assessment, like the second pipeline and the Delta pipeline, or the Carson National Forest Plan, and then you have like surplus petroleum disposition program, and you have a lot of nuclear waste and other waste is being disposed of. So what you can do is look at and find out. Then you have a lot of national forest plans going on right now too, and so you can sort of like use an aerial assessment and look at what's going on in the totality as far as, say, for instance, you're looking at the pipeline. You got the pipeline, you say, oh, it doesn't bother us because it goes south on the other side, so it does not impact our area. But then here comes Delta pipeline. Delta pipeline going on the right side of it. And so you say, oh, it does not impact me because it's on the right side. It's not impacting me. And then you end up with another pipeline going in front of you, and then you'll become a diamond. You are enclosed with pipelines, even though they're not right up on you. If any, for safety reason or releases or things like that, you are enclosed by pipelines, surrounded by pipelines. And so that's one of the things, especially when I evaluate NEPA projects, is when so many pipelines is encroaching up on the same area or the same population of people. And even though it may not seem bad to the people, sometimes they buy it and, low income. So they say, okay, take the money, you put the pipeline. But they did not tell them that right down the road, another pipeline company just crossing over in front. So right then, so we had, there has been some changes based upon those type of analysis, they may relocate a pipeline or redirect the pipeline from a certain area. So those are the kind of things you may want to look at and use EJ Screen for. It's not just can you use the demographic, it can be used to also real estate people use it to assess property all over and other things like that. So that's basically areas that I felt that, tribal may want to look at and go beyond demographics. Next, EJ Screen externally, as we stated earlier, some of the people that use EJ Screen are the federal government. And one thing we wanted to make sure EJ Screen does not, is not a substitute for other databases or order sources, to make sure to substantiate the finding. And also with the state government, many of the states are trying to build their own EJ Screen based on our EPA EJ Screen, which is allowable. And this information is available and out there for people to use. And then we have the local and tribal government used to implement environmental program and regulations, allowing EJ Screen data, as they often don't have the resource to build their own tools. So this is EJ Screen is a good use. Next. Also, EJ Screen externally is being used by community, and it's being used more and more. I'm hearing by community to identify potential issues, grant writing, and comparing environmental burden. So what the community I've learned, they're using EJ Screen when they go to meetings or public meetings. They will have some hand-on data, or have an idea of what's out there and what's impacting them, and how the finder or whatever company or what the releases or is being, I say polluting or whatever is impacting the community based upon the area and who's living there and the people that live in there. So they are really using their, having used in court and things like that, and they have won in certain cases. So, and that was pretty good. So, but one thing we wanted to make sure that communities know that it definitely it's not a risk assessment, and that's one thing we had to get across. And the communication of EJ Screen in their defense is understanding and make sure it is being used accordingly. And it also is used by academians in teaching about environmental justice and to conduct research. Next. EJ Screen benefits. Okay. External use is shares enhanced shares accountability. It includes protection through shared government and enhanced collaboration with state, tribe, local, and federal partners, using the full range of compliance assurance tools. So basically, it try to meet one of our goals is to try to make sure that we are sharing and we are all accountable for making sure that the protection for human health and the environment. Next. It increased transparency and public participation. That is one thing that the public and the community complain about, is complaint of transparency and not coming full circle with what's going on or what's around, or talking in a language that is not fully understand, and stuff is left out that the community or the impacted area may overlook or do not know. And public participation is just a platform for the public to participate and meaningful engagement. And what we mean by that is, when you go to a public hearing or public meeting, that's not meaningful engagement. We really need you to hear what the community or the people are saying, the citizens are talking about, answering their question openly without hiding anything and things like that. So, and another transparency is when you're building like projects, you have to, we would love for them to be transparent that your project upstream might induce flooding or some type of impact downstream or to communities that's not even aware of the project because they are not within the parameter or near within 5 or 2 miles of the project. But they may be within 5 miles, and based upon what you're doing, maybe like building a levee, you may change the flow or the contour of the land, or you might change the direction of the flow of the water. Now that community that's 5 and 10 miles away is now inundated with flooding or other unknown hazards or elements. And next, future of EJ Stream. What we're going to do, we're going to continue incorporate EJ Stream into EPA programs and activities in Region 6. We're trying to do that at this time. We're one of the things is trying to make sure that we utilize EJ Stream and take EJ into consideration in the day-to-day activity. We do not say you have to do EJ all by yourself, but you can use it as a tool, but we recommend you also use EJ as a substitute tool. Support a partner using EJ to consider EJ. And so we're talking about partners in that federal facility space and everyone else whatever they're doing, we'd like for them to use EJ and at least to consider EJ when you're doing your activity. Continue public engagement and evaluation, improve training and accessibility to learning materials. On the EJ tool, we have tutorials, we have webinars that's out there on the website that is accessible, and to improve usable and accessibility, expansion of the map layer relevant to the EJ community. And as I stated earlier, one of the things that we'll talk to Resort wanted to add is underground storage tanks, domestic wells, those other things that, and also to get a better home on rural communities. Next. We want to continue to look for EJ routing data to incorporate, so your input and comments are very important. No comment is not acceptable, and we will evaluate it and look at it. If we can make an improvement to the tool that's beneficial, we will do that. So if you use the tool or you look at the tool and you found out it can't do this, say it, and we'll look at that, and it's a possibility. It may be an enhancement factor, or it may not can be done. So, but it will be considered. Criteria for inclusion of indicators, environmental indicators, drinking water, pesticide, climate change indicators. We have some, one more. Underground storage tank, I jumped before my time, but yeah, those are things, other indicators, health data, amenities such as access to the grocery store. So those are some things that we're trying to expand. Next. In our office of Community, Tribes, and Environmental Assessment, we have two, for the Office of Tribes, we have an EJ Screen specialist. Like you use EJ Screen and you just want to reach out to someone and talk about EJ Screen and how, you're doing a run, then you can talk to Alexandra, awesome. Yeah, Alexandra, and then, and then you have the Office of Environmental Justice. You have a team leader and EJ liaisons in that can assist you in runs and activities with the EJ Screen. And our EJ Screen specialist in the Office of Environmental Justice that most of them doing most of the runs in the past is Omaro Farrell, and this is the previous protocol that we have in place at this time. But as you know, we have a new director for our office, and you met her earlier. So we will work with this protocol until she say otherwise. Now, if you want to just go in and play with EJ Screen on your own and do look at the tutorial, look at the facts, look at the table of information, you just type in ejscreen.epa.gov. and then it'll take you straight there to our website. Next. Any questions and answers? We'll go to the next page while we wait on questions and answers. Okay, let me check my chat. So let me quickly. I have nothing. So Karen, what do you want me to do? Move on or?
Yes, thank you for
Okay,
that presentation.
Okay, and thank you. If you see, these are our office, Jonah Pope, Barbara Dustle is our staff director, Randy McGee is our property, Randy, and Gloria Bond is the EJ team leader, and myself, the EJ stream coordinator and point of contact. Thank you, Karen and group.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't see anything in our chat box either. So if you have any questions after the fact, you can send them to me. I will forward them on. So with that, everyone be sure and join us for our next session that starts at 3 o'clock. It's OCTEA Border Affairs / NEPA. So everyone be sure and join us for that. And if not, have a good afternoon and we'll talk to you later. Thank you.
Thank you.